So I've said in years past, Advent is the most challenging season to preach in, because Advent is all about waiting, and it can be a little challenging to find something fresh to talk about. So for today, I want to focus on that line from the gospel, "Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing, drunkenness, and the daily anxieties of life." So all that really means is we're supposed to live our faith well, because we don't know when that final day will be upon us. Let's leave this world in a state of holiness rather than a state of sin. And that's pretty basic spiritual advice. That's prepare, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Live every day like it's your last. Act as if your boss is watching and evaluating you today. The cliches go on from there, I'm sure. But the gospel reading today is even more prolific than those little cliches, because it goes into more detail. The gospel warns us that our hearts can be easily distracted basically with three things: carousing, or having fun; drunkenness, we can count that as all addictions; and the daily anxieties of life. And I think there's something to that, because when our pleasures and when our anxieties rule us, we very rarely make good life decisions. But oh man, those daily anxieties, those are killers. Those can completely overwhelm us if we're not careful. And the reason I can say that with confidence is our pleasures have limits. Eventually, we need to take a break from having too much fun. But the daily anxieties that hit us, they seemingly stick with us forever. They come out of the woodwork, they stick upon us, and we can't shake them off. And they weigh us down. And if you have to deal with, 3 or 4 different things, it can feel like you're sinking to the very bottom of the abyss of despair. And that's not good for your heart. You got to keep that thing afloat with faith, hope, and love. So here's one thing the world has taught me through the years. Your heart is actually a pretty fragile thing. And it becomes even more fragile if you refuse to feed it with prayer, the Eucharist, or works of mercy. But even if you do everything right, your heart is still going to be a relatively fragile thing. Speaking personally, even when I have every spiritual advantage on my side, my heart still wavers. Not my faith in God. That's rock solid. He has done too much for me. I will never turn against Christ. That would be the ultimate betrayal. All that's fine. My faith in humanity, my faith that things actually will work out okay, that's not quite so solid. There are some bad days in there sometimes, and maybe that's a sign of spiritual immaturity on my part. But however you cut it, the point is the same. Your heart is something you need to nourish and protect, because it is, in fact, a pretty fragile thing. And last Sunday was a stark reminder of that fact with this whole business in Waukesha. And if you please, I want to spend the rest of my time just kind of explaining how Sunday unfolded for me. Because Sunday was a full day in the first place. So I was still a little angry because disrespectful materials were left on the windshield of every car on Saturday night Mass. So I wasn't quite over that, so I was still upset. But I was also really joyful because we had a beautiful baptism that morning. I got home around 2 o'clock and just passed out for like a 2-hour, period. And for those of you who aren't as educated as me when it comes to the science of napping, working on my PhD, When you sleep for more than 20 or 30 minutes, you basically have like a nap hangover. like you're rested, but you're really groggy at the same time. So, I wake up, I read on my news feed that something terrible happened in Waukesha, and what it basically boils down to is around 7 o'clock at night, I was angry, sad, joyful, rested, and tired all at the same time. And went just an emotion roller coaster. And when you're like that, you just don't want to do anything more. You want to have some comfort food, you want to go to bed, and everything important can wait till tomorrow. I was in that state, which is relatively normal on a Sunday for a priest. And then my mom texts me, "Hey Justin, did you hear about your friend?" "No." "Call me." So I do. My mom says, "Hey Justin, we just heard that blank died in Waukesha. He was your friend, right?" And yeah, it was. My mom had his full name correct, and he works in Waukesha, and he would realistically go to a Christmas parade. So we were definitely talking about the same person. So after the phone call, I thanked my mom for the information. I hung up, grabbed a rosary off the wall, preparing to, say a prayer for, the repose of his soul. And I distinctly remember thinking, well, that's it. My friend is dead, and only a miracle will make that not be the case. I remember thinking that what's the point in hoping? But I figured, what's the harm? Popped out my phone, gave him a call. No answer, of course. I didn't leave a voicemail message. I hit the end call button, and I immediately got a text. "Hey, can I call you later?" No punctuation. And I'm like, all right, well, that's obviously an auto responder for when he can't answer the phone. But again, I'm this far. I'm like, what harm can it be? I'll text back. Yeah, call me whenever. Are you okay? Question mark, exclamation point, question mark. And of course, I don't get a text back. Why would I? So I'm just sitting there. I haven't even started my rosary yet. I'm just kind of pre-mourning the loss of my friend. And then about 5 minutes later, I get another text. "Yes, I'm okay, Justin. I'm in the ICU for observation, but we think everything's going to be fine and it's not too serious. Thank you." I'm like, and I text back, "Thank God. Love you, man. Rest well." And obviously I passed on the word to my family, and it turns out my mom heard from my sister, who heard from her friend, who heard from her other friend, that my friend died in Waukesha. So I was operating on fourth degree information. So I started my rosary, and I just passively wondered to myself, does that count as a miracle? Because it's really just the correction of bad information. I'm not sure that counts as a miracle. It's a cheap miracle at the very best. But I'll take it. So I realize that's a little on the dramatic side, but I think that story is a fine example of how our daily anxieties can cripple our spiritual life if we let them. Our fears, our worries, our problems, they can just wash over us like a tidal wave. And the only real defense for that sort of thing is faith, hope, and love. If you don't have those things, it will wash over you and you will be powerless when things like that happen to you in life. And that's what Christ is warning us against in the gospel today. These things are not supposed to crush our spirits. We are supposed to be steadfast and solid no matter what life dishes out upon us. So if you're a visual person and you like a picture to go with all of this, it's a little sillier than the story about my friend dying, but if your life is a fish, faith is the dorsal fin. It keeps you stable in the water. And the more turbulent the water, the more badly you need something to keep you stable. Because without it, you're just at the mercy of the current. So welcome to Advent. We wait in vigil for Christ with hearts made strong in faith. And let us not let our hearts grow drowsy through carousing, drunkenness, and God help us, daily anxieties.